just have to eat a few
Yeah, it takes it's because there's so many steps. The one thing that I wanted to show was how to turn it off after it's done, so that's not also. You just pull this red button and then you need to save it on the chip and also complete the even there are two little tags at the same time. So
And it'll give you the option to save on the.
yeah, by default it'll say save on the chip if you want to save it. And then the other thing that will ask you to do is even complete. So it'll say yes, complete and then press the stop. So that's where we are.
So now it's already on YouTube, right?
It is. That's what I'm trying to pull up, but it's not showing up. This YouTube also is not. Usually it shows up like this. It shows up. There you go. So usually I check to see if anyone is there or something like that. If they have any questions. Some people complain about volume sometimes. Usually you put that and it picks up. So you don't have to worry about this part as long as you have this thing going. See if my comment came up here. If there's somebody saying something. You just kind of look at this and then usually what I do is once it's set up, just turn up the screen. Because this one kind of discharges fast enough and then just keep this out. And when it's done, turn it back on, the screen will come up, but it'll still be transmitting. You just open it and then shut everything.
Slide the button and then save to the card.
Yeah, I'll show you once it's done. You just kind of pull it to the little red dot and give you the two options clearly. And then,
What are the two options?
one is saving to the chip, to the memory card, and one is completing the event. So the two, yeah, you have to do both and then keep it clean. So,
We'll wait until.
yeah, we'll wait until. So I'll keep this with me. Eventually, I'm going to give it to you for a few days. So, okay.
Okay, shall we begin? Om Sahana Vavatu. Om. You can just follow after me. Om Sahana Vavatu. Sahanau Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karavavahai. Vadhitamastu ma Tejasvina vadhitamastu Tejasvina vadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Are there some new people that have not been here before? Anyone? Oh, so let me do this. I'm just going to circulate this for those of you that already have your name on it. You can just click it, and for those of you that are new, you can just put down your name somewhere with your email address, and then I can I can add you to the roster.
The visitors from Germany.
Ah, wonderful. They're already on the, were you on?
I'm on the list, yes.
Oh, wonderful. Very good. Welcome. How long are you here for?
For 2 weeks.
Oh, good. Excellent. So a quick revision, and then we will go forward. So the fact that we went over is an important one and should be kept in mind as we view the teaching and the understanding and really our experiences of life, everything all rolled into one, which is the following. The method of achieving what we all want to achieve is unconditional happiness, unconditional freedom. The method of achieving it, as we have been doing without some instruction, is not going to lead us to what we want. And that method is as though my sense of freedom is not with me, and I have to do something to that sense of freedom. Our feeling is that as I am today, I am limited in my accomplishments and so on, and I want to make some changes in my life in various ways. Everybody, this is where the beauty of the whole creation is. Everybody has a different feeling of what they need to do. But the common thing is that all is not completely well with me today, but if I make some changes, then I will achieve what I want to do. And what I want to do is to have unconditional freedom. And this is one very interesting thing, that even though deep within ourselves we want unconditional freedom, but we have resolved to a fact that I probably won't get it. And none of my experiences gives me that feeling that I will be unconditionally free. But yet I cannot get rid of that feeling. This is a very interesting catch-22. I can never really reach what I want to do, but I don't want to give up reaching what I want to do. And in fact, this is where schools of thought, or I would say religions, exploit this fact. There's an exploitation. The exploitation is, in this life, as you are leading it, can you get absolute freedom? And we all nod and say no. Or we say not nod, but we say no. You're right, we don't. I think we can provide you a way of reaching unconditional freedom in the future. And it seems very tempting. However, my teacher used to say that. He says, if you really analyze this, you find that all proselytizing religions are nothing but glorified travel agents. In this following sense, you may be looking for a vacation, and somewhere where there's no crowds and it's all beaches and it's very beautiful, and yet you are safe and so on. So finally you find out from some travel agent, and he says, yes, there is a place that you can go. I remember when I was working for Hewlett Packard, one of my colleagues came back from a vacation. So I said, where were you? She says, I went to Belize. And I had never heard of Belize. That was the first time. I said, where is Belize? She said, oh, it's a beautiful place. You have to go there. It is, I think it was in South America or somewhere. And it's pristine beaches, it's better than Hawaii, and this, that, or the other. But of course it costs you more money to get there, etc. Hotels are expensive. All this was given. So the religions all give us this kind of a pitch. That in this life you cannot really achieve unconditional freedom, but if you go and believe in the following things, you will now achieve unconditional freedom forever. You'll be in a heaven forever. And Vedanta says, please, this is illogical. Illogical. And there are various ways of looking at why it is illogical. I'll offer to you, just for the time being, a mathematical version of it. And the mathematical version is, unconditional freedom means infinity. Not a large number, but infinity. The reason is that the large number also has limitation. When you reach the large number, it is less than even a larger number. So the only thing we want is infinite freedom. Number one. The second one is infinite freedom, infinity from a mathematical standpoint, cannot be gained. Why can't it be gained? Because you are away from infinity now. That means you're limiting infinity, isn't it? Cannot gain infinity. So then, what is to be done? This is where the basic premise of Vedanta is, that you are either already infinite or you are not. And it's not possible that you are not infinite, because there is something called infinity, and it must be you. So therefore, to close off that topic, the basic premise that Vedanta wants us to consider, the wisdom of Vedanta wants us to consider is, my sense of absolute freedom is already me but not appreciated. Praptasya prapti, according to our Sanskrit, an acquisition of the already acquired. So this we have gone through with some examples. I'm not going to go through all of that. But the one thing I want to reiterate is that our entire study, if you're serious, must start with a memory of this premise, because it has enormous implications. It means that, as you know, I'm just revising it again, that like something that you already have but you don't appreciate it, what you don't need is pure action. You need some action in order to understand it. Jnanam, knowledge, is the most important one. And karma is secondary to it. So it's not as though karma is not important. We all have act, we are human beings, we are living beings, we have to do something. But the purpose of doing is very different. We were just talking about this in the earlier class. So very briefly, just summarize what we were just discussing in the earlier classes. It is a little bit like enjoying now versus investing for the future. So what I mean to say is that karma, I'm talking about the relationship between doing and knowing. So normally our approach in life is to do things for my current enjoyment. We all do that. We want to maximize our ability to be happy at any one time. This is what karma is all about. Whereas in this new paradigm of praptasya prapti, it means don't spend the value of karma, invest in the value of karma. You still have to work, you still have to act, you still have to do things, but do it in a way where you don't just live for the present happiness, although I don't want to mislead you on that, because ultimately this is what the message is, to live in the present. But what I'm saying is that the karma, according to Vedanta, should be preserved in order to gain knowledge. It should not be just done randomly for the present. Investment for, so this is actually the basic difference between karma and karma yoga. So the entire teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is to convert karma into a yoga. And so this we will spend a lot of time on. I don't want to do that today. This being the case, the primary derivative of the premise that I have what I need, but I just don't know it, praptasya prapti, means how do I get to know it? Because that's not my experience today. My experience is that I am highly limited, having some problems, some freedom, partial this, partial that, is what my life is all about. How is it that I need to really gain this knowledge? So there we saw in the now very few words, and then I think our revision will be over, we'll go forward. What we saw last time was that the knowledge that we need to have is a particular form of knowledge called viveka. Viveka. And so, in fact, now I can turn this on. Go back to our lessons from the previous ones. So this is what we had done last week. That viveka is a particular form of knowledge that we are asked to specialize in. And the viveka is not general knowledge. Like, for example, you are examining like say you are in a jury and a case is brought to you. Is the person guilty or not? There you have to look at all kinds of evidence to come up with an informed decision. That is called jnanam. That means general knowledge. Viveka is a particular form of jnanam which has to do with the fact there are two things involved and you have to resolve one or the two. This is called viveka. It's a discriminative knowledge which distinguishes between two things that look alike. This is what Vedanta is all about. It is to develop a maturity in viveka. And here, what it means is, I have to do a viveka between different forms of reality. There is a higher form of reality and a lower form of reality. And the lower form of reality still looks real, but not as real as the higher form of reality. We have to specialize in this skill in order for me to become knowledgeable. This is the skill that I must polish. And so I had given you some examples of viveka. So let's look into this. So there are some important examples. One of them is between a play, to be able to distinguish whether it's a play or not is one type of viveka. You remember the example I gave about a 3-year-old child and a 9-year-old child, where both the mother of these two children was acting in a play where she's a battered wife, and the 3-year-old just saw that. She was not supposed to be there because normally she has a babysitter, but on this particular day the mother could not find a babysitter. So she told the two children to just sit on the side and don't disturb me. I'm acting here. So the 3-year-old happened to see that my mom is getting battered and she's crying and somebody is slapping her. She says, what the heck is going on here? This is my mom. So she throws away all the things that she was drawing on and so on and just rushes to the stage and spoils the whole thing. Why? Because she does not have the discrimination to see. Whereas the 9-year-old says, hey, don't do that. I know your mom is getting battered. She's not getting battered. This is just an acting. So this is one example. And all these examples, by the way, are what our life is all about. Eventually we will see that the whole life is exactly like a play. But we don't see it that way. And this is an important thing to see. In order to see that it is a play, you must know what is non-play. See, this is very key. If you don't know what non-play is, you cannot distinguish between the lower form of reality and the higher form of reality. So at this point, for us to say that please view this whole life as nothing but a play, it's not acceptable to me. What are you talking about? Because I don't know what is a higher form of reality in my life. Therefore, I cannot dismiss this whole thing as a play. This is what we have to do. We have to articulate, and we will make our first try to do that today itself. Okay? So just now we are, because obviously I have to accelerate. We only have limited time, and so we need to keep proceeding, and we will do that today. Anyway, I just want to go back to the examples. Another one is very similar to that, is between a movie and a non-movie. And by the way, each one of these examples brings out something different, as we were just talking about in the earlier class also. So it brings out some things that are peculiar to it. The difference between a movie and a non-movie is that the movie is much more immersive. A good movie means by the time you enter the movie house and the commercials are over, the light is dark, you put away your cell phone, and so on and so forth, you are now entering into a new realm where, if the movie is well made, you identified with the characters to a degree that you laugh and cry with them. Much more immersive. Okay? Anyway, the good, very interesting thing part of that is that if it gets to be very immersive and you really begin to cry, you can always look at yourself and start eating some popcorn. And you can just, I was just telling this to the earlier class also, that Swami Paramarthananda gave this example. He says, one good, when you go to a movie and the characters are having worse problems than you feel good about it. That at least my life is not quite as bad. So this is a pleasant experience, pleasant entertainment. You come back and he says, well, you look at your own self in a slightly different way. Glass is half full or half empty. This is one good thing about a movie. But it's possible that a lower form of reality, which is a movie, can overwhelm you. It's very possible. These are all possibilities that are given until we come to the real possibility, which we will come in a minute. So this is one. Then the one that I think we will focus on today is a person and the person's reflection in the mirror. One is a higher form of reality and one is a lower form of reality. In Sanskritam it's called Bimba and Pratibimba. Bimba means the original, Pratibimba means the reflection. So this is a very famous way to analyze. Anyway, so this is another case for a viveka. Then we saw also the gold and the ornaments. And so it's very possible that your focus is on, your buddhi is purely on ornaments, not on the gold. And the focus on the ornaments is more shallow. So here, for example, a young woman is getting married. In India, gold is very important. And the design of the gold is much more important to this young woman. To the father who is purchasing the gold, the design is not that important. He simply weighs how much gold can I afford, and he tells the goldsmiths, okay, I think I can show me something that is within my budget. So he's more interested in the budget and the substance of the gold rather than the design. So this is also a viveka, where you can be focused. It's the same thing. The ornament is nothing but gold. It is not a separate thing. But the way you look at it is different. So this is another form of viveka. Then at a much more advanced level, and this is what we are studying in our advanced morning class called Mandukya Upanishad. The viveka between a dream and a waking state is also viveka. This has its own peculiar characteristics. As I mentioned to you, each one of these examples has its own characteristic. The dream and the waking state is a very important tool for analysis. As you progress in the teaching, in the study of Vedanta, surely you'll have to pass through this door of analyzing your life vis-a-vis your ability to dream. And what is peculiar about, what is special about the characteristic of this example is that when you are in a dream, you have no way of understanding the waking state. Like you do when you are watching a movie. If you're watching a movie, you can be immersed, but you always have the ability to walk out of it any minute. Not so in a dream. In a dream, you have no ability to. It is only when the dream ends can you say, oh, that was just a dream. Anyway, so that's another one in terms of the examples of viveka. We also saw number 6, which is the sun rising or not rising. The peculiarity about this example is it is possible for you to have an experience without knowledge. And when you have the knowledge, the experience does not have to change. You can still know that the sun really does not rise. The sun is stable, the earth is moving, but you can still enjoy the experience. But this is a viveka, also a viveka. Number 7 is a very important one, and we will talk much more about this. So there it meant that if you are in a semi-lighted situation, you could mistake a hose or a stick or a rope. And a rope is usually taken because it has some curvature, just like a snake. And you can mistakenly see the rope to be a snake. This example of viveka is especially important because a harmless and static rope is taken to be a harmful and moving snake. It's possible. People with some fears can take this. It's very possible. This is important because it turns out, as when we progress in this our teaching more, a harmless world which doesn't have the capacity to limit me is taken to be a somewhat dangerous world that has the capacity to limit me. This is another case of viveka. Okay. The next one is a more, I almost didn't want to put that in, but I just thought I would. I was reading some material on it. This is also a form of viveka, where the non-ability to distinguish between attachment and love creates problems. We'll spend some more time on it later. Let me just mention a couple of things on this and then leave this particular example. Pardon me. what is said is that a pure love, or just love, represents your ability to help. Whereas attachment has a much greater degree of falsity with it. It's much more, love has very little falsity. There is some truth in it. You want to help. Attachment means you masquerade worrying about someone as love. And worrying about someone is not helpful at all to anyone, either to that person or to you. All it smacks of is love, but in fact has no love. This is also something to discriminate against. Also part of Viveka. So this is one example. Then I think number 9 I've already went through, karma and karma yoga. So spending now versus saving for karma until you understand. And this we are going to spend a lot of time on, because this happens to be one of the favorite tenets of Bhagavad Gita, and we will go into that in more time. Then I would now add number 10, which I did after last week. When it all comes down to, this is where we have to really focus on, is the viveka between I and the not I. Atma means I, and anatma means not I. And there is a great deal of confusion between the I and the not I. The two are mixed up together. And this mixing up creates a false sense of who I am, where am I going, etc. And it all comes about because it's kind of like one who does not understand the difference between the higher level of reality and the lower level of reality. The two of them are all mixed up. So this is what we are driving towards. All the other ones, like from one number to 1 to 9, and there can be many others also. I've just given you the main ones, are just a practice for the number 10, where we have to really put all of our previous understanding, our relative understanding, is to resolve this confusion between Atma and Anatma. This is what we have to do. So now I'm going to take you to the next step and introduce the basic confusion between Atma and Anatma. And after talking about it, we will do a meditation on it. And the meditation is intended to, number 1, give you a sample of what Vedantic meditation is all about. How does it differ from other types of meditations? And what is the utility of the meditation? We will briefly see that today, and of course we will build it up in the future. Okay? But before that, I want to focus on number 3. A person and his or her reflection as the way for us to look at ourselves. Okay? So let's proceed on that. I've been with the help of one of my students. I'm working on trying to have something that can be typed in. I didn't know how to do that, so last night I was playing with it. So let me show you what that is. I think this is as big as we can go. Okay, so now let us focus in on the phenomena of looking at ourselves in some reflecting surface. You can either take it as a mirror or you can visualize it. It'd be better to visualize it in a moving reflecting surface like water. Either one is fine. So now let us look at several aspects of it. Number one, the original, which is you and I, which is called Bimba, cannot be directly seen. This is a very interesting thing, that really speaking, we can never see our face, never, without a reflecting surface. Never. You cannot directly see, you cannot objectify, you cannot see your face as an object unless you look at a reflection. Whereas the reflection can be objectified. This is important. It's very important. Because I am evaluating myself not as I am, but as I am reflected in some things. So I can interrupt this, I can go on, but let me just interrupt myself and just explain this fact. So now, supposing we interview you and ask each one of you, how do you feel at the moment? What will you say? You know what you will say? I feel good, or something bad. That is an evaluation of your mind, one which is being objectified. Or you can say, I am in pain. It's painful. You're objectifying the pain in the body. Or you can say, I don't remember something. You're objectifying your memory. But regardless of that, you're objectifying something, isn't it? You're, and it, from your perspective, very accurately, you're not lying. This is how we lead our lives. We look at our mind, our body, our memories, and we make an evaluation about ourselves. Don't you see that that is your reflection? You can never see yourself. You're not describing you are describing your reflection. How can we say that? Because it is exactly the same phenomena. You are just describing your reflection. And the reflection is very interesting. The reflection can come and go. If the mirror breaks, the reflection breaks. But does it make any difference to you? You're independent of the reflecting surface. But the reflecting surface is, the reflection is very, very much involved with the reflecting surface. If the water is moving, then the reflection is also moving. This is exactly what happens. When we say, I'm happy, that means your mind is a clear reflecting surface. It reflects you very well. When you say, I'm unhappy, your mind is not reflecting you. It becomes like a dark cloud. See the distinction, see the viveka between bimba and pratibimba, between the real, between the original and the reflection. The reflection can, another thing is, the reflection is based on the reflecting surface. If there's some leaf, or if it is a very clear water. In fact, this analogy of water is an important one that we will hopefully come back to at some point in time. Why? Because it is said in Vedanta that the water can have two forms of impurity that does not reflect you well. So one of them is called dirt, very lot of dirt. And in fact, if you ever go to some portions of, even in here, but I know there are ponds in India that I was grown up with that had moss on the surface. And the water is the one that gave rise to moss, and the moss covers the water itself. And I remember this, my father was working in the mining state of Bihar, and we would often go to Bengal also, near Calcutta, which was nearby. And there you find the villagers. We would pass by some of these villages, and you find that if somebody wants to take a bath in the water, which they can, do often, there's no bathrooms in the home at that time. What you would do is you would remove the moss from there, and the moss tends to come back. So you keep removing it. You take a quick bath while you iron. That imagery comes to my mind. Anyway, so there are two types of obstructions that water can give. One is it has dirt on it. The other one is it doesn't have dirt, but it's moving. It's moving. In both cases, the waviness of the water and the dirt on the water prevents the reflection. Even if you look at it, you don't see yourself. Why this is important is because the analysis of our mind is similar to the status of the water. So this is what is called tamas, rajas, and sattva. These are the three qualities of the mind. Rajasic, tamasic, and sattvic. The tamas is like dirt. Rajas is like the waviness of the water. And as we will see later on, Rajas means too many desires. You're impatient to accomplish in life. I want to be somebody big. want to do some things that are, this is one of the basic things in our life is everybody wants to do something which no one else has done. You want to be unique. And so that comes from rajas, too much rajas. Everybody should do some things, but an overemphasis on accomplishing is a result of rajasic mind. Or tamas means, tamas has so many different aspects of it. It has, one aspect of that is that you don't want to do anything. You're just too lazy and so on. Another aspect is that you react too quickly, you get angry too quickly. That's also from rajas, from tamas. The third aspect of that is that you do not follow ethics. You are unethical. This is also part of tamas. Anyway, I just went sideways to just give you an idea about the nature of the reflecting surface. So now going back to this example again, this is an important thing to see, that there is a certain relationship between the original and the reflection. So we have gone through this fact that just because a reflection goes doesn't mean that the original goes. Another thing, I am independent of the reflection, but the reflection is not independent of me. If I move, the reflection moves, but the reflection cannot move if I don't move. It follows me exactly. Therefore, I have a higher level of reality than my reflection. This is the viveka. Okay. Having said that, let me at least introduce the terms which describe my own reality. Okay, so I'm just going to give you the terms and then do a meditation on it. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, I have a higher I and a lower I. And my higher I is, I'm just giving you the terms now. Is called Atma. Also called Sakshi. Okay? And I also have the lower eye that has a couple of names to it. I'll give you both. Two names I'll give you. and then we'll use it interchangeably. One is called Jiva. And the literature equally calls this ahankara. Even though it's pronounced as ahankara, but it means an M rather than an N. Either one is okay. So ahankara, jiva means in fact, no, I think a better word would be why can't it? Sorry. The living being. This is a good translation of living, of jiva. The living being, one who is endowed with prana, is called jiva. So the living being. Ahankara means the I thought. And in Sanskrit, I. And the thought I, and as well as the jiva, so if I can sketch this out a little bit more, the I thought does not stand alone. So, and in fact it's very interesting, you can even experience it to you when you wake up, is the I thought. I am. But the I thought does not stay in isolation for very long. In fact, within seconds, the I thought is surrounded by what am I? First you have I thought, pure nascent I thought. But very soon it is surrounded by your name, your memory. In fact, it says that ahamkara is added to it what is called mamakara. Mamakara means my thought. So the I thought doesn't stay as an I thought very long, just for a second, but it immediately surrounds itself with my thought, my family, the jobs that I have to do, my relationships, my duties. It all comes back together. Anyway, this is what the jiva is, the living being. So the living being, the jiva, is the lower I, and Atma is the higher I. The higher I, the Atma, is the Bimba. It is the original. The lower I is the reflection. The higher I does not change. The lower eye is continuously changing. In fact, let's leave it at that now that I have identified the names, and we will now do a meditation on this so that we can explore a little bit. Now, an introduction to meditation before we start on it. Okay? So, an introduction to Vedantic meditation. The Vedantic meditation, so for those of you that have a background in yoga, and we will actually go through this at some point in time, so I'll give you some comparisons, contrasts, and so on. But just in a very brief form, the end point of the yogic meditation is what is called samadhi. And I'll describe it a little bit later on. But I want to focus in on and the name of that in Sanskritam is called long word, Nididhyasanam. I'll write down the English for that. Nididhyasanam. So now, what Nididhyasanam is, very briefly, we'll come back to it and more. I just want to, since I want to do Nididhyasanam, I'll give you a very quick introduction to it. What Nididhyasanam is not thoughtlessness. It's not thoughtlessness, as samadhi might be. What it is an immersion into a different viewpoint than the one that you are used to. It is just like, it is the opposite of a movie. When we say it's an opposite to a movie, what I mean to say is, you remember, I mentioned it to you, that for a person to enjoy the movie as an entertainment, you must know what a non-movie is. Nididhyasanam is the non-movie. It's just the opposite of a movie. It is to see that really the movie is nothing but a reflection. Teaching. It is not independent. You don't do right away. Having said that, I'm just going to give you a little taste to see how it will happen later on. Now, what we do, in fact, this is one interesting thing to it. Part A, Part B is the actual meditation. Yoga steps are extremely good and better than what we have. So we adopt a lot of the Patanjali's yoga's preparation. In terms of the actual meditation, there are differences. Instead of being thoughtlessness, in fact, it has some ideas that you have to think about. So now, what I'm going to do, time is it? It's 11:05. Probably in the next 20-25 minutes, may not leave you much time for questions, is to do both an introduction to the preparation and an introduction to the nididhyasana, based on what we have already seen, which is the higher eye is the original, the lower eye is the reflection. Okay, so let us now proceed on the meditation. Just symbolically, if you can switch off the two switches there, just make it slightly, it's still light, but it'll be just as a symbol. Om Namah Shivaya. For those of you that are from the yoga background, you probably have a very advanced set of meditation already. What I will briefly describe are the simple steps that we do in Vedanta as a preparation. So the following steps are in preparing for nididhyasana. You may recognize them if you are a yoga student or even otherwise. But here is an introduction to the preparation. So we go through 5 or 6 steps. The first one is what we call sankalpa. Sankalpa means instruct. And the sankalpa goes as follows. Listen, O my mind. I am going to do meditation for the next few minutes. And the nature of meditation is to examine myself without the roles that I play. Through myself and you, my mind, together are involved in playing various roles. But for this meditation, I just want to let you know that I do not want to spend time on the roles. That will come later. I just want to examine who I am without the roles. This is the sankalpa. This is framing the nature of the meditation. Then the second step is asanam. Asana means a posture which is most conducive to meditation. Number one, it should be sitting, not lying down nor standing. Sitting. It is okay to be sitting in a chair or cross-legged on the ground. And the asanam has two features to it. One feature is that it should be somewhat erect, not slouching. If you are sitting in a chair, it is okay to have your back touching the back of the chair. Your hands should be clasping each other in your lap, and your legs should be firmly on the ground. The reason it is not slouching or should not be slouching is because you may have a tendency to go to sleep. This is one aspect of the asanam. The second aspect of the asanam is that it should be comfortable. Don't strain. In fact, the goal of the asanam, the perfect asanam, is where you don't have to change positions during the end. Most of the time, if you have to sneeze or cough, it's okay, but otherwise you don't need to change. That should be that comfortable. So the first step is sankalpa. The second step is asanam. The third step is an awareness of the one sense organ in your body which is throughout the body. That means a sense of touch, sparsham. So now the third step is to be aware of the points of touch in your body. Your hips touching the chair, your feet touching the ground, your back lightly touching the chair, the hands touching each other, and finally the gentlest of the touches, the two sets of eyelashes touching each other. The upper set of eyelashes to the lower set of eyelashes, and then close off the eyelashes so you can feel the touch. Disengage. And touch, bring them back again. is without forcing your mind to focus, it automatically starts to focus. You don't have to force it, but just the awareness of the sense organ of touch allows your mind to gently quiet. This was step number 3. The 4th step is a mental awareness of your entire body. Starting from one end of the body, the very top of the head, examine if there are any stored tension anywhere. We have already done it to the eyes. You can move to the neck area and pause to make sure it is free of tension. Just give it a command, relax. One technique to use if the relaxation doesn't come easily is to relax it with each outgoing breath. Just let go. Move on to the rest of the body. Your chest, your arms, and the one area which is notorious for harboring tension is your stomach. You may have to spend some more time. It doesn't have to be perfectly relaxed, but relatively relaxed. Go all the way down to the end of the feet. And you can revisit the rest of the body to see it as a unit. So this is the next step. The one step after that is to be aware of your breathing. Your breathing should be evenly distributed initially, relatively lengthy, but become a witness to it. The last step is to see that if there are some lingering thoughts, they seem to come from 3 windows. One window is the past, where there might be some lingering thoughts of memories. One window is the present, and one window is the future, where there may be some worries about things to do, etc. Tell your mind, I'm closing all three windows. So this constitutes the preparation for Nididhyasana. Relatively simple, required time, and generally at the same place at the same time every day. But to make sure that the preparation is adequate. Then we enter Nididhyasana. Please see the distinction between Atma, the Sakshi, the original, and the reflection, which is either called Jiva or Ahankara. The original is in the form of I am and I know. Please see that all of us at all times, in every conceivable experience, are aware of it. I know. You know your experiences, you know your memories, you know any doubts, you know ignorance, you know knowledge, you know. What you know may change. That you know does not change. You may know certain languages. I know English. You may not know certain languages. You are aware of the fact that you don't know, you are ignorant of a language. Even the ignorance of something is under I know. I know and I am are one and the same thing. I know is not your property. It is you. It is not something that got started. What you are aware of, what you know, can have a beginning, can have an end, may flicker, may change. That is the pratibimba. Your mind, your body, is the pratibimba. That is the ahankara. It had a beginning. It may end. Ending no effect on the Sakshi, the Atma, I am. See this distinction very clearly. Constant, timeless, independent awareness whose main expression is I know. And the entire experience of life is in the form of the reflection. This is a sample of Nididhyasana. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So as you can see, you can turn the lights on, yes, that the knowledge of the self, the knowledge of Atma, is in the form of viveka. And as we will proceed further, we are almost at the end of the introduction to Vedanta. I mean, we can go on with some more facts and so on, but I think, as I promised in my 16-week course, we will have a short introduction to Vedanta, and then we will give you an introduction to the Bhagavad Gita and provide you with the references where these basic concepts are being talked about. So it's not as though we are leaving the introduction to Vedanta, but from now on, I have to sort of do some analysis exactly how many weeks I will do this and so on. I've got to do that. But from now on, we will now translate these principles of Vedanta through the eyes of the Bhagavad Gita. And so for a few weeks, I will look into the structure of the Bhagavad Gita. Well, how is it trying to explain it to us? And also give you a summary of the first third of the Bhagavad Gita that we have actually covered in some detail with some other students. And I'll summarize that for you so that you don't lose out on any of this. So then we will go to the second third of the Bhagavad Gita, starting with chapter 7. So my sense would be that probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we would do an introduction to the Bhagavad Gita and also sketch out the introduction to Vedanta, and then go into more details about the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So that's kind of like the plan of action. So with that, I close off today's class. Sorry, didn't leave you any time for questions. Also, if you recall, I mentioned it to you that next week will be a special class where I will combine both the classes, the morning Mandukya and the Bhagavad Gita, so that if you are on vacation, you don't have to miss it. You can continue going somewhere. You can always watch it later. And if you are here, then I'm going to take a particular introduction from Mandukya Upanishad and sketch that. So maybe a little bit more advanced for many of you, but it's okay. You can at least see what we talk about and how we sketch out the nature of Ishvara, nature of God in that class. So next week we will have that special class, and it'll probably be somewhat crowded. So if you can bring maybe a cushion to sit on. Then the 2 weeks from now, we will resume our structure of the Bhagavad Gita. So that's our plan. So let me just say a short prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya. Om Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. I'll explain that prayer one of these days, so in the meantime, just do that. Thank you. Ashok.
Are the timings next Saturday same?
9:30 to 11:30.
9.